Another week, another coffee break chat. How's it going, Heather?
It's going well. Yeah, it was Easter weekend, so yeah. Easter's a good time to reflect on. I think even if you're not religious, it feels like springtime and Easter and like that movement from the quiet of winter into the growth of spring and the
Mm,
death of the old and the resurrection into what's new. It's a good kind of churning time for thinking about all those big things.
yeah, very, very liminal spacey this time of
Yeah.
year, especially in our part of the world anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so speaking of liminal spaces, we have been thinking a lot about the upcoming webinar, which is happening this week, right?
Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday. And we're talking systems.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I know you've been thinking a lot about are systems disruptors and what that looks like. Because, yeah, we've talked before about the systems that we're currently in are not working for a good majority of people.
Mhm.
Um, and they need to be changed, but it requires effort and disruption in order
Yeah.
to have that change happen. And one of the folks that you and I both admire, who was a system disruptor, who was a system disruptor, is the theologian and pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who became quite famous for his both his preaching and his writing, and also his activism during the Second World War.
Mhm.
You just watched a documentary about him. I've read a biography about him. And one of his quotes that I think resonates with both you and I is this one, where he says, "We are not simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice. We are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself." Um, Tell me a little more about where that lands for you and what comes up for you when you hear that.
Yeah, it really struck me watching the documentary. That was one of the most memorable quotes that he talked about because uh, Bonhoeffer was really wrestling with his belief system was pacifism, essentially nonviolence, and
Mm-hmm.
yet he was being invited to join this resistance movement that was plotting the murder of Hitler, like assassination of Hitler, and so he was in that place of wrestling with like what's his belief system? Does he stay with the belief system of nonviolence, recognizing the violence that's being caused by someone like Hitler and the system that
Mm-hmm.
Hitler has built? Or does he move over to this, to contributing to potentially bringing down the mastermind behind this system? And so that ethical dilemma was like just a fascinating part of his narrative. And I think that when we talk about disrupting systems, that's often what we're wrestling with is like, where do I stand ethically? Do I stand by and watch the system destroy people? And I think we're watching that in real time right now. So many people's lives are being harmed by systems of power and privilege and empire. And,
Mm-hmm.
or do we do something intentionally disruptive to the system? And when he talks about like driving a spoke into the wheel itself, like that feels like that's that moment, that conscientious choice is like now I am on the side of intentionally disrupting the system. And I like to use the language. I having grown up a Mennonite, we were raised as conscientious objectors because and rooted in nonviolence and pacifism. But I've sort of adapted that language for myself, and I think about myself as a conscientious disruptor. And so that's part of what I want to talk about when we talk about our systems thinking on our webinar on Thursday. It's like, what does it mean for us to intentionally become that systems disruptor that sees the harm being caused, that witnesses just the system having too much control and power. And really our systems are built around things, a lot of them, and this is not universal, all of our systems are evil or anything, but it's
Yeah.
like when systems are unchecked, when they are given too much power and we defer to them too much, they can become malignant systems. And that's where we see empire being built. And then at some point, there has to be enough conscientious people that choose to be the ones who stick something into the spokes of the wheel and disrupt the system. And that can look really different from one person to the next, what that is, like whether that's joining the protests or like Cory Booker, who stands up for 25 hours, does this speech. Like that was his version of disrupting the system. And so I think right now we really have to talk more and more about that. It's like, what is your role? If we see this happening in the world, what's our role to disrupt it so that we have the capacity to start to co-create something new to replace that system with?
Yeah. And to be super, super clear, we are not advocating that anyone plot assassinations at this point in time.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
But I
No.
think but I think you're right. I think it is important to think about what does it mean for me to be a conscientious disruptor? And maybe, we're business owners. What does it mean for our business to conscientiously disrupt the capitalist system that we
Yeah.
unfortunately are still tied to? You know, what does it look like for me? And there are still going to need to be people who bandage the wounds. Of course,
Yeah.
that's still an
Yeah.
important role. Like, don't think we're minimizing anyone's anyone's impulse to help those who have been harmed by any
Yeah.
stretch. But also, and what you're saying about systems makes me think that when the system itself becomes more important than the people it's supposed to help and the people that it's supposed to provide for, that's where the malignancy starts
Yeah.
to come, right? Like when we are protecting the system over and above protecting the people that are supposed to be helped by the system,
Yeah.
that's where, for me, the ethical dilemma becomes a little clearer, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I serving the system because it is benefiting the most people, or am I trying to preserve the system because it's all I know and it's all I've been told is safe for me,
Yeah.
right, to do to protect the system?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of complexity in that, like you
Of
say, is
course.
there's never one right way to address it, and there's never
No.
one solid single role in systems change. Like there are, and we're going to talk more about that on Thursdays, like what are the ways that we can all contribute?
Yeah.
And there's many roles, like you say, there are those that have to be the caretakers and the hospice workers, like for systems that are dying. And yeah, we'll unpack that a little bit more, but so each of us has to see witness what's happening and be honest about what's happening, and then seek out our particular contribution in it. And it's not a right or wrong. And I think
No.
going back to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I think one of the interesting things about him that we both discussed is like he admits to having made mistakes in that too.
Yeah.
And choosing one role when maybe he could make a more valuable contribution in another role, because at one point he actually like left the US when enough of his supporters got together and gave money to him to flee to the US because they saw him as an important teacher and influencer and wanted to protect him from what was going on in Germany. He
Yeah.
gets to the US and realizes, oh, I have to go back and contribute to what's happening in my country. And then not long after that gets arrested and he ends up being killed by Hitler. And so
Yeah.
like, but what we said, you and I were chatting before this, and we were talking about how that if he'd stayed in the US, that might not have been a mistake, because he was
Yeah.
a really valuable teacher and um, philosopher, theologian kind of voice in the world. So he would have probably gone on to have more influence.
For
It's
sure.
not that there's a right or wrong choice. It's just that it's just, do I make the choice or do I avoid making the choice? Do I just stay out of it and keep playing along with the system because the system keeps me safe?
Yeah.
I think that's where the ethical dilemma is. And even if you decide to stay safe, I'm not going like I'm not the one to
Oh
judge you
no.
for the
Oh
choices you're
gosh, no.
making. you're keeping your family safe. Maybe parenting is your primary role right now. That's also contributing to the system. I I don't think any of us has the right to say this is the right way to do it.
No.
But I think all of us ends up facing that kind of challenge when there's so much harm that potentially can come to people if a system runs, like I say, like we say, turns malignant.
Yeah.
Then we take a look and say, what now? What's the next
Yes.
needed now?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like if you attended our third seminar about the core needs triad, your need for safety, your need for belonging are going to happen. Like those are going to be activated. You are going to desperately find ways to maintain those, because that's what we're designed to do. And this isn't about judging folks for
No.
doing what their nervous system is demanding.
Yeah. But it's also, I mean, along with that, it's also, this is very much what we're talking about is how do
Yes,
we resource people and not
exactly.
isolate them? Like, we're not talking about solo heroes here.
No, no,
Like
this
when
is
we
not a
talk about
superhero
systems
venture.
disruptors, we're talking about who, like when we gather as a collective, who are the people that maybe have the strongest voice or the capacity to speak truth to power, and then we're going to resource them and stand alongside them, and we'll do our part. But it's not like we're not sending out a bunch of solo, and that's why some of the flaws in our thinking is sometimes we're being too influenced by the superhero kind of model of like there has to be a
Totally.
hero to come in and rescue us. We're not talking about that at all. We're
No.
talking about a collective like choice making and collective resourcing of people, and how do we resource ourselves individually and support our nervous system being in a good grounded place. And that's where we keep going back to this language of being a grounded guide, because we
Yes.
want people that are as grounded, as emotionally mature, as nervous system soothed as possible to go and do the work that they need to do to contribute to systems change.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of talk lately about, mutual aid and coming together and sharing resources. And I think what we're talking about as grounded guides is we want to help have mutual aid, psychological mutual aid, where we're able to
Yeah.
help co-regulate each other and resource each other to self-regulate, so that we can be the spoke in the wheel. Because honestly, I do think that things like mutual aid are a spoke in that wheel.
That's a
And they are a
disruption on
spoke.
its own. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's a disruption on its own, because it's disrupting this notion of individualism. It's disrupting this notion that you personally have to purchase all of the things that you need in order to survive. It is disrupt it. Yeah, it's wonderful that way. And I think we want to extend it beyond sharing of physical resources to also sharing this sort of stuff. Like, how do we resource ourselves, our nervous systems? How do we resource, good communities, so that we can co-regulate in positive ways and don't just get stuck in these cycles of high activation, which
Yeah.
can happen so much online when we're only invested in parasocial relationships. Like, we want you invested in real relationships
Yeah. Yeah.
of mutual love and accountability and resourcing.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. That's what equips you to do this, do the hard stuff, and to have a safe place to come
Yeah,
back to. And so it's
that's
not,
right.
again, it's not saying that you shouldn't ever make the choice for safety. It's like balance those things out. Like find the
Yeah.
way to be the brave like warrior, if you want to use that language,
Mm-hmm.
and then find a place to land when you just need to rest and you need to withdraw.
Totally.
And so I think that's the balance that we're always trying to
Yeah.
seek in this work.
Yeah. And we're like, I we've never we're not judging anyone. Like, we're all learning, and we all mess up. And like you said, like Dietrich admitted the times that he messed up and
Yeah.
needed to make a different choice than the one he'd made before. Because that's what life is. You make a choice, you find out what the consequences of that choice are,
Yeah.
and then you make another choice. And you
Yeah, and
either
as a
learn from it or you don't, I guess.
exactly. And one of the voices in this documentary I watched was Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and
Yes.
he said very clearly, it's like we never get the bolt of lightning from the sky telling us this is the right choice. It's like we're
No,
always using our discernment and our powers for humble reflection to make the next choice and hope that we're as close to the right choice as we possibly can. I'm
that's
not
right.
using his language exactly, but I thought it was a wise way to reflect that too. It's like each of
Right.
us is faced with choices and we're doing the best we can, and then we do the best again the next time. And sometimes we
You
change our
betcha.
mind and go back to an earlier choice.
Totally. And systems thinking and systems changing is not overnight work. It takes a
No.
long time. It takes a long time for a forest to regenerate. It takes a long time for systems to change. It takes a long time for things to shift.
Yeah.
Even in this fast-paced culture that we tend to live in, it still takes us a long time to adjust to things. So yeah, I guess we're just hoping that you'll join us to learn more about systems, become optimistic realists, maybe accept what is and think forward to what might be. Um, and yeah, get some mutual resourcing and learn a little more about. Yeah, I always love listening to you unpack systems, and I'm super interested because I know you've been sort of chewing on this for the last month already. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've all come up with.
Yeah, and just to put another little teaser out there, like some of what I'll be talking about on Thursday is really rooted in some wise thinkers that I'm turning to in terms
Yeah.
of modeling our systems thinking off of a more nature-based thinking, more indigenous thinking, more
Mm-hmm.
relational thinking. Like, who can we turn to that has wise guidance for us? And there are a lot of like wise thinkers that are processing this. So we'll be bringing some of that in as well. And I'm actually quite excited about it. I think it's going to be a good session.
Me too. So join us this Thursday. It's still time to register on our website, centerforholdingspace.com/leadership for liminal spaces. All the
You
links will be in all the places.
yeah.
And we'd really love to have you join us. Anything else to close, Heather?
No, I think we're good.
All righty. Well, hope you had a good coffee break, and we'll see you again next week.